This is a production of Cornell University.
Well, thank you, Chris, and it's a pleasure to see you all today. I am going to talk about some of my connection to work in the farm-to-table movement. Part of why it's really special to me. I grew up, my family has a farm not too far down the road from Cornell. And so working on that from Cornell has a great special resonance with me. And thinking about kind of why farm-to-table matters, thinking about the importance of food to us as we have throughout humanity celebrated harvests, express our gratitude for food, or the meals that bring us together, the meals you'll have here at Reunion, that'll be kind of your gathering points. Food has been really an essential event, and sharing food has been an essential event through our lives. And as we've in the past few generations, one of the tendencies we've seen is for people to be a bit more disconnected for that. And one of the movements we see is people being very interested in reconnecting with where their food comes from. We see more young farmers getting engaged with agriculture again. We see other people just wanting to be connected to the process. Other people just looking to see no more where is their food coming from, feel more connected to that experience. And so as we have started to have this movement, this reappreciation for connecting with food and how it's grown and can be grown locally, sourced locally, and feel more kind of connected to the process. It's something that helps build and empower communities, and new varieties, new cultivars to help that is one of the areas I contribute. We extend beyond that, but it's one of the areas that's the most personal and special to me. And in that process, look beyond just looking at the benefits to create new varieties for a farm, for a grower, for the food system. A critical thing is the consumer in the food system, all of us. And how can we empower us to be navigating that with the choices that we're wanting to make, trying to make, thinking about freshness, nutrition, sustainability, all the choices we make. How do we find our way through the food system with so many new crops, so many opportunities to get food, so many opportunities to get produce? How do we know that we're making the choices we think we're making? And so my apologies for anyone that has any memories of taking multiple choice tests in this room before in Call Auditorium, but this is the test, the choice you might have in the marketplace is looking between these two squash and which one is the ripest, which one is the most nutritious. One of them happens to be ripe and ready for the market, and the other one is not ready. So how do you tell which one is the most delicious, most nutritious? So how about if through plant breeding we can change the question and make it an easier question? So now A and B, which one is the ripest? So this is a honey nut squash, one of the products I've helped develop. And so clearly B is the ripe one. It has a ripeness indicator, so like a green versus a yellow banana, a green versus a red tomato. This ripeness indicator, it empowers you as you go through the grocery store to find, or the market to be able to find the produce that's the ripest. That'd be the most delicious. It is also, not only can you tell when it's ripe, it's naturally more nutritious, has more vitamin A, a great antioxidant for your health, provitamin A. So the honey nut squash, all the way on your right, B, will have 3 times the beta carotene content, this provitamin A activity, as the ripest of the squash on your left, and 10 times as much as you would find on the less ripe one you see. And so this gives you a way to be able to find something that's going to be delicious when you bring it home to your family, when you grow it. And along with that, you get the flavor, the nutrition, and not only is it something that is helping some farms to be able to have an identifiable product where they can kind of guarantee the quality, and you can understand that what you're getting, it also helps people change some of their dietary choices because rather than going through the produce and finding something maybe not to your taste, maybe you can get them at their peak, and maybe this is going to influence how much of it you can eat and have all these great plant nutrients in your diet. So this has been a novel thing that wasn't very fast initially to get into the marketplace. Luckily, I have a great ally in this process. So I am very fortunate to work with a renowned farm-to-table chef, Dan Barber, one of the world leaders in this. And as we started to develop this and some of the co-creation of this new squash, it was working with him in the fields, the opportunity to taste together, see the techniques, how we get the most flavor out of it. Up here is before I was savvy to Instagram a while ago, so I started to eat it before taking the picture. But you see this beautiful small squash, something that's convenient, that fits kind of some family sizes nowadays, is able to be more of a side dish rather than kind of filling up a dish, concentrating the flavor, concentrating the nutrition. And also one of the things it does that we didn't realize at the time is on the plate, it can resemble what it looks like in the field. And so it's really bringing some of that field present to you on the plate. And so that's kind of some of the farm-to-table connection it can make. And it has received a lot of popularity. It's been described in many food magazines, media. You might have seen us talking about it on Netflix in a great documentary. Also, it's achieved one of the things that is few vegetables get to have. Apples we'll know by variety name. You might be going to the orchards at homecoming in the fall and be getting a snapdragon apple. So this is a butternut squash that's actually sold by name, not just a butternut squash, but honey nut squash. And as we've continued to go along, there's been a lot we can do to make the food we have available to us in the farms that can grow for us more exciting, more distinctive, to be able to really showcase what we're developing, give consumers, give all of us some new flavors to try. We've been in many of the seed catalogs you'll see this year. There's the white cucumber behind me, Martini, that has also a fantastic yield for the grower and a much more delicious, refined flavor than many other cucumbers you'll have. The habanero pepper, which is a habanero pepper with the spice removed, but it keeps the flavor of a habanero pepper, so you can experience all those flavors without the burn. And so it's a great way to see all this depth of flavor that's in the produce around us and some diversity to really help make some of the produce more competitive with some of the other food choices we have. And we can continue to push this and work for some more ornamental edibles and try to get peppers that are both loaded with vitamin C and are just a nice snack size. So it's a more convenient way to be able to be eating delicious, hopefully compelling produce, and also a plant that even as an ornamental kind of works in many more areas that we might have available to grow food for those of us that might have to have more of a balcony space than a garden space. And so in this process, as I continue to be really excited about this co-creation of this avant-garde produce, new, exciting, increasing the flavor and the appeal of it and making it more noticeable and enjoying seeing farmers incorporate this into what they're growing, I had started to really think this is what Farm to Table was about, to be able to get all these great new exciting things for the farmers to grow. And I was fortunate that, again, this is where Chef Barber came in to correct me and say, well, no, it's not about that. So we're supporting the food system. And it's also just really about trying to figure out, so farm to table, and so what do the farms have? What is the best way to support the bounty that's there sustainably on the farm, and how do we integrate that into our diet, into what's being served and showed and celebrated? And so I found myself in some interesting breeding projects at the end of the season, beginning of the season, before you are having a harvest from a field, or right before the frost, like it is in this top panel. and you've gotten all the right produce that there is out of the field, there's still a lot in the field. In many cultures outside the U.S., they would be looking at how they can avoid wasting all of this. It's something that we are starting to tackle, is how to look at food waste. And so the project it kind of evolved into is looking at this field and figuring out, well, here's a field of squash. All this foliage that's left, could this be something that we could incorporate into our cuisine, adapt to our environment, what some other cultures do? So although I spent much of my time here selecting for the tastiest squash, I found myself going through the field, finding the tastiest squash stems, and looking for something that we can get this other food that kind of fits Dan's visions. And so we ended up with actually a delightful squash penne pasta. So it's gluten-free. It just comes right from the plant, the squash plant. But it's something that is abundant throughout the field, throughout the season, and is something that is nutritious and fitting right into another use a farm can have for much of what it's already producing that otherwise be wasted. Some of the challenges, some of you might be close to experiencing some of these. If you have gardens at home, the dreaded cucumber beetles as they come in, they eat squash especially, and as they defoliate the squash, there are some different controls we can use, some insecticides that now we're starting to discuss more about how they may be impacting pollinator health. And so looking at ways to avoid that, it turns out there's some natural diversity within squash we can start to leverage and use to be able to create squash that the beetles will leave alone, that we'll still find tasty, but the beetles will find distasteful. And it's as simple as, see, a golden zucchini here that the beetles will perfectly ravage, and a straight neck or crook neck summer squash that they leave alone. So for me as a plant breeder, it is as simple as crossing the two of them together, a cross-pollination, and then going through the generations to be able to find where I've kind of merged the best of all those characteristics towards a more sustainable harvest. However, that's not the only insect threat out there, and talking to growers in the southeast who have given up growing zucchini, as we're about to be flooded with zucchini, you can kind of imagine what threat there must be to not produce zucchini. But there's other squash that are naturally resistant to some of the other pests, insects you might experience in your garden, in your fields and your farms. So above me here is a tromboncino squash, an Italian heirloom squash selected for flavor that you don't see much in the marketplace. And so as I try to work with Dan to how can we adapt this to some of other ways of cooking and preparation, and also to make it more delicious and sustainable through a variety of taste tests, we are able to find some of my breeding lines that are excelling in the kitchen and are delicious and sustainable on the plate. And so that's really what much of the farm to table, the farm to fork movement have meant to me. It's both trying to create new varieties to really excite us and nourish us, and when we can find them and incorporate them into our diets more and more out of just a natural beyond like we should be eating these things more, but a drive and desire to eat them more. And also ensuring that we're also really thinking about the farmer, the grower, and how we can take things that are thriving for them and incorporate that into our vision and plan for this new cuisine. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.